You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
There was a text message, and it was like,
You've never seen one of those before.
well, it was from Brett Larkin. And for a second, I'm like, how does, and then I signed up for something. I'm like, how does Brett Larkin text me?
on, right?
What's
That's
up?
crazy.
What's up, BFF?
You want to have coffee? Okay.
Right.
I will be there
What's
on
up?
Tuesday.
Let's do some Koreas.
Let's go, babe.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
We
I feel like I'm
are
so disheveled.
in a
I've
really
got
good
puppy all
flow
over me.
as of lately with the podcast.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it immensely. We always enjoy the podcast.
I was like, it's a new thing. We like it.
But we go through waves with podcasting,
We
right?
do. I seriously, I'm so disheveled.
Disheveled.
Isn't that the right word?
Disheveled.
Disheveled. I'm disheveled. It's not
I'm disheveled.
disheveled.
I've been deshelved.
Disheveled. Am I
Just to
saying
help
it
my
right?
brain,
Oh,
will you
God.
jump up and fix
I don't
that
want
blanket?
to. I will do it for you, though.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It took me 5 years to get this with my hair out
To
of the
get
way.
everything situated.
And the chair on the
Oh,
carpet.
no.
I'm going to have another meltdown.
You're going to be all right. So we record in our home in case that wasn't obvious. And we have a nice little studio space for the podcast that has a bunch of sound dampening equipment / blankets that we hang on the walls.
Otherwise, we echo.
So yeah. Anyways,
I'm back.
I was going to say
I'm
something
back. What?
about the podcast. So we have a ton of new followers.
Hi,
In the
welcome.
last couple of months, we have gained a lot of new followers on
Yes.
social media, and we're really, really grateful. If you are one of those people that have just found us, we're super grateful and excited that you're here.
Welcome to the party.
We're happy that you're listening to the podcast.
Yes, we are. Really
There
seriously
are
welcome. Thank you.
hundreds of episodes of this
So
podcast for you to consume and enjoy, and we invite you to go back and listen to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have been listening to the podcast and supporting us for years, we're also grateful that you're here as well.
grateful.
Like, we're not a cell phone
Thanks
company.
for being with us.
Okay. We don't just love new customers. We don't just give new customers free cell phones. We give longtime listeners free cell phones as well.
Did you hear what you just said? We don't. It's a metaphorical cell phone.
Yeah.
It's
nobody's
a
getting
metaphorical.
free cell
Actually, it's a phone number. You
But
can
we're-
call us. You can call our number. You
Hold
get
on.
our number.
Hold on. We're really grateful, no matter if you're brand new or if you've been here for a really long time.
Yes.
We're really, really grateful, truthfully. And here's our phone number. It's 423-521-0355. Call us right now.
Right now.
Oh, we've got a call coming in.
Ring, ring.
Such dorks.
Well, if you're a long-time listener, you know that.
Let's get
That's
into
what you
it.
love about us,
Let's
right?
go.
Is that we're just completely disheveled. What's the word?
Disheveled.
Disheveled.
Think of D-E, duh.
Did you just duh me?
No, think that's how it's
You're
spelled.
like, duh.
And then shelve,
I got the dishelve.
and then ud. So it's dishelved.
My favorite is the duh.
The D-E is the
A
duh.
duh. Think of the duh, shelf, a duh.
Yeah. I don't know about
That's
you.
how I'm going to say it forever.
But
I'm like,
I am
I'm
feeling-
duh, shelf, a duh. Oh my God. All right.
What are we talking about
If you're a
today?
first time listener, I hope you're still here after that.
This is a insider baseball. So the podcast, like we said, we've been around for like 7 years. We've got a lot of episodes of the podcast. And a long time ago, back in the day, we had part of, because it's evolved and grown over the years, right?
We're on episode 360.
Yeah.
So it's a complete 360. Look at that, right?
It's done a couple of different things over the years. And we used to call us sitting down and talking on the podcast coconut coffee with Steph and
I
Craig.
forgot about coconut coffee.
Right. So that was like that wasn't the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
It was just kind of what we were
These
calling
sessions were.
our hangouts when we were talking.
Yeah.
And so we used to call it
Aw.
coconut coffee.
Because we
And
were
then
drinking our coffee with a coconut. in it.
Somebody left us a review that was like, I don't even remember. They were like not arguing with us, but they were like, this is a dumb podcast. All they do is talk about like coconut milk. And it was so funny. I don't remember. And I'm like, well, you listen to the one episode where we
right.
were pretty heavy into the coconut milk for a minute.
Right.
So
Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
It's not for you, buddy. We appreciate you moving on.
exactly. So this episode today, we are going to be discussing emotional intimacy,
Intimacy.
which is different and yet similar than like sexual intimacy, physical intimacy, right?
But it not only can, but it usually leads to, if sexual and physical is something that you are comfortable with.
Correct.
So
let's get into it, Ben.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So this is something that we've struggled with over the years.
Right.
And if you have issues in your relationship, your ability, you know, as you think about this topic.
Okay.
And what I was going to say was we've struggled with our emotional intimacy over the years.
Yes.
However, one way that we have made up for that, like truthfully, there has been, I don't even know because we didn't talk about this beforehand, but
I know.
We have overcompensated. We have used physical intimacy. We have used
sexual intimacy
as a way to like
a placeholder in lieu of emotional intimacy. Is that what you're saying?
Like in lieu of, and sometimes
or like a filler for.
Yes, but it's almost like to the detriment, right? Where we're not even connecting emotionally, and yet because we were having sex, and at the time what we thought, and we did have great sex, and we still have great sex, but it's like. Yeah. Is that kind of what we're going to get into a little bit?
No, but we totally can. Right.
Yeah.
For a lot of it too, is to me, I didn't know the difference. Sexual intimacy was emotional intimacy.
Right. That's what intimacy meant.
Mm-hmm. Intimacy meant sex. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't understand that it didn't have the emotional aspect because I felt emotionally connected to you in different ways, or as much as my understanding and my perception at that time had it. And like with that being my perception at the time, that was absolutely factual. But because it has changed over the years, and I have developed a a bigger space, a bigger capacity, a greater capacity for intimacy in many different areas, I now can hold that better, and I see the differences. I see how it one does not mean the other. And they can lead to each other.
Right. They can be not mutually exclusive, but right. I think they're needed, obviously, right?
For me, they are. For me now, like before, like sexual intimacy was the intimacy, and that was like the builder. And for me now, I need emotional intimacy in order to be sexually intimate and to step into the sexual intimacy. As before, I didn't because I thought it was the same.
Right. That's what we thought, we were being intimate.
Right.
Just because we were having sex.
And like very like close sex or connected sex, or even just vulnerable,
sex,
good
unquote,
sex.
good
Yeah,
sex,
right.
Yeah.
Good sex. Like very like, I don't know what the word is. Yeah, we'll say good. That works.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like what words are safe here, but that's what, so I thought we had it down.
Yeah.
What about you?
Let's define intimacy then in regards to how we're talking about it now.
How we're,
like in this episode. So,
because
they're two different
intimacy?
things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really realize that early on in our relationship, and early on meaning like last year, but
I wasn't capable of it.
Yeah.
And I would have been like hearing this conversation, been like, yeah, check, we got that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my capacity,
we're being intimate,
my capacity was there.
Sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good idea to explore what intimacy actually looks like in our, maybe not in our relationship right now, but just from a contextual understanding, so then people know what we're talking about.
Well, why don't you take off on that one? Because I did the last. What does emotional intimacy mean to you?
So emotional intimacy is the ability to sit with each other in their emotions. Like that's a really simplified way of looking at it, right? Where you have the capacity to actually just sit with each other in emotions, good and bad emotions. Intense and strong and powerful emotions, as well as like heavy, dark, stressful, sadness, grief, shame, all of those emotions. It's the full spectrum of emotions. And being able to cultivate that type of emotional intimacy with each other, like this is really truthfully, we have physical connection that, yes, can and does lead to sex. So just like holding hands and hugging and, sitting on the couch next to each other, all of those kind of physical connections. And then you have like all of this analytical way of communicating with each other, which is another form of connection and intimacy, where we're talking and we're discussing our relationship and we're coming up with solutions for the problems that we're dealing with. And we're, coming up with a plan for where we're going on vacation. And all of those things are integral That's my word that I don't know how to say. Yours is disheveled. And
I thought you said 2 different words, so keep going.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I try to use it all the time, and every time I use it, I get stuck on it.
Yeah.
So those are things that are needed in a relationship. But then this emotional part of it, right? The ability to sit with each other in their emotions.
Without trying to fix it or like without checking out, just like really being present and sitting with it.
Yeah. And that is massively important. And that is another form of intimacy that truthfully we were missing.
We were
for
like
a
an
long time.
energetic intimacy too, a healthy energetic intimacy.
Yeah. And it is so incredibly, I don't want to say it's necessary because there's plenty of people that don't do that in their relationships. And I think like if you don't connect with your partner emotionally, that doesn't mean you have a bad relationship.
Right.
That just means that's your type of relationship, and that's okay. Right. For us, it has enriched everything else. It's enriched our ability to connect across the board. And so, I mean, right now we're prioritizing that type of intimacy and that type of connection simply because we're kind of reaping the benefits of it and seeing how much more full and beautiful life is. Right?
Yeah. I'm getting there. That's nice. I like the distinguish that you made. Just because your relationship, if you don't have this and you don't want like it's not something that everybody needs or like functions with, like that you may be like on the spectrum where this doesn't, like this would be torture. Like it just depends where you're at. But if you feel like this longing, this disconnect, it might be something to look into. And if you do want it in your relationship doesn't have it, then these are like some of the conversations that you can have and some of the ways you can like start to build it. So it doesn't mean if you like nothing is broken, but maybe it might benefit. So like listen to and see, does it resonate as this is something that you would like in your relationship? Or you would like to, you can build it with yourself.
Yeah.
Like too. And that's a big deal, is like getting really like comfortable and sitting in with like your emotions and being able to honor them and hear them and get like curious about what you are feeling and what you are needing and what you are desiring. And so when you have that deeper understanding of yourself, you're able to show up with your full self showing up in that authentic way that people are able to connect to, and you can see them too when they show up. So it's just all these ways that it's this super juicy interconnectedness.
Yeah. And again, I can't stress enough. We thought we were having great sex.
We were having great sex.
And then the more we were able to open up and be vulnerable with each other in regards to our emotions, which cultivated this emotional intimacy that we're talking about, it took the physical connection, the sexual connection that we had to another level that we didn't even know existed. So if you're looking for ways to enhance sex, right, that's always like
it's a sex enhancer.
Right. That's always like the selling point, because it's so funny how we're all obsessed with sex and then we can't talk about sex.
Sex feels good.
Like you can't say sex on Instagram. You have to say
segs. S-E-G-G-S.
So stupid.
The segs.
All of that stuff drives me bonkers. Yeah. Anyways, we're not talking necessarily about sex on this podcast today. Today's
it might
emotional
come up
intimacy.
Because,
well, it's already come up.
Well, that's what she's just kidding. We'll stay adults through it. I'll do my best.
So what are some ways that people can start building emotional intimacy if they're interested and they're curious and they want to start heading in that direction?
Well, I think the first way would be just like getting, I guess you just said that, curious and heading into that direction, is communicating that with your partner right off the bat. This is something, if you sit there and like try to start doing stuff that is completely out of the realm and you haven't had that conversation, they might be like, what are you doing? What's happening right now? No. Do we need to call an intervention? What's happening?
A stroke? What is happening?
Blink if you need me to call 911.
I'm feeling emotions.
Right? And you're giving like really weird, awkward, long eye contact. And they're like, hey, cute little psycho, what's going on over there? So have the conversation with your partner and be like, hey, like I am wanting to get curious about our emotional intimacy and like take our intimacy, whether it's like to a new level, or see what this kind of intimacy feels like in our relationship. Are you interested? Would you like to practice some of these things with me? And a lot of times when you're giving somebody, you know, depending on where they're at, if they're having a crappy day, you're like, hey, I want to try this new emotional intimacy. Will you get still and be emotional with me? You might be like, I'm going to just, no, can't do that. So just watch, but have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
You know how to have the conversation. You don't need us to tell you when to go have the conversation. We will. We'll tell you anyways because we care about you.
I want to push pause right here.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, we're going to continue to talk about this in regards to relationships and the connection that can happen when you start feeling and or expressing and experiencing emotions together. And we're going to do so from a perspective where we're not speaking about it in a masculine, feminine, man, woman, not in a gendered way, because it's truthfully something that we all struggle with. It has nothing to do with gender when it comes to the struggle of feeling your emotions. Everybody does. And that's for a bunch of different reasons that also isn't about this podcast episode. However, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going to listen to this that are probably already saying like, yeah, this is hopeless, right? I've already tried to get my husband to tell me what he's feeling, or to try to get him to listen when I'm trying to tell him what I'm feeling. Like, this is probably already taking place in your relationship, and you've already probably had struggles with it. And so oftentimes what happens is anytime you bring something up in your relationship, it immediately activates the other person. Like if I come to you and say, hey, I want to start connecting emotionally, you might have a beautiful response of like, oh, that's really cool. I'm excited, right? Let's get curious about this together. But more likely what's going to happen is you're going to become defensive because you think that
we're
somehow
not connecting emotionally, or we're lacking.
Right?
I'm not providing what you need.
Exactly.
All the things where you turn and make a bid for love into a personal attack.
Yes. And so that's probably what's taking place is you present this idea, or you're like, hey, I think we should try this new thing, or I would like to connect more emotionally. And they immediately get defensive because they think that it's something that they're doing wrong.
Right.
And then it becomes the big, long story about everything that they are doing, and look at how I'm already trying to do all of these other things. And like you're asking too much of me. Like it just becomes this snowball that everybody can relate to in some way. I am guilty of this. I still do this sometimes, where I'm like, you'll come to me and you'll be like, hey, I really want more connection. And I'm like, I'm doing everything I can. Right. So stressed out, right? And I'm like, I'm already doing this. I'm trying to do that. And that has nothing to do with like anything you've done wrong. It has everything to do with where I'm at literally emotionally, right? Where my nervous system is and all of those kind of different things. So,
and sometimes I pick the worst time on, well, it's because I'm not coming. There's times I bring it to you, right? And I am in a centered space when I have regulated my nervous system, and it's like, here's the opt-in, right? I'm coming to you in a healthy way. But there's also times that I come to you when I'm like, I need connection. We're not connecting. I need connection. I'm going to come to you. Hey, we need connection. And you're like, oh, because I just brought it to you in a way that kind of didn't set the scene for us connecting. So that's why, it's kind of like checking in with yourself.
If you can get curious about that first and foremost, like how can I actually set the scene where this can be something that happens in a productive way, rather than immediately creates. So it's not like, hey, that thing that I talk about all the time that you never
you're not
do
doing,
and you don't show up.
Do you think you can show up this time?
Like, it's
I know you're going to say no, but are you even going to try?
Yeah.
Don't say any of that. I mean, you can, but it's probably not going to work.
Do your best to have these conversations in calm moments and in times where there's not a lot of activation going on. And you can even present it from the perspective of like, I'm not saying that you aren't doing this. I'm not saying that anything is wrong in our relationship. I love you. I feel that you're doing a lot. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. All I'm saying is I would like to get curious about this together. I would like to explore this more together. The reason being is it's not because we're not doing it. I just feel like it might bring us more of what we already have. Right. It might enhance more of our connection that we already have. It might, all of these things. So let's just get curious, because it might add to what we already have, and we already have a lot.
Right. I really like it when we connect.
Yeah.
And I want to help grow that. I want to help cultivate that. So you're coming to it from a place of like, we're in this together. Let's build, as opposed to.
Yeah. You're not meeting some need that I have, and you're failing, and then they're getting defensive. And again, it is very common that in heterosexual relationships where the man is the stereotype that doesn't feel emotion. And if that's your situation, like, we validate it, it's real, that's happening. And that's very, very much the case. And it's super common.
Yeah.
But it also happens in all sorts of different relationships. And there's plenty of relationships where the women folk, where that is the opposite, right? Where the woman is emotionally shut down and withdrawn and isn't willing to be open and connecting. And that happens as well.
Yeah.
So we've gone through, over the course of our relationship, we've gone back and forth where I'm very much showing up with all of this emotion and wanting to connect and, all the vulnerability. And then you're like, fuck off. You're shut down and you're withdrawn. And you're like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that stuff right now.
Yeah. My tank is empty. Yeah, so absolutely. It's gone back and forth. The cool thing about some of these practices that we're going to talk about too is they do not require, like, these intimacy builder practices, they don't require communication. I mean, you talk about it beforehand, like what we just said. Let them know what you're going to try a thing, and then you're having your time. You don't just like pounce on them, and you have that predetermined communication. But the exercises, the practices, the little experiments that you get to see, do they fit into your flow? They don't require conversation during them. So it's not about sitting down and now here I am going to open up all these feelings and emotions and trying to figure out how to articulate my words. These don't have those. So,
yeah, which is awesome.
Right?
Because like, if the end goal is I want to be able to sit in front of you and open up my heart, right? Because truthfully, that's like the undercurrent of all this kind of emotional stuff that we're talking about in real intimacy is you open up your heart and let the other person in, and vice versa. So it's like you're opening up your heart and you're allowing the love to flow between the two of you and all of these beautiful things. And that's the goal. And we're trying to get to that space where we're able to connect and talk and communicate and hold each other. And it's just this really beautiful experience. But it takes a lot to get there.
Yes.
And that's why I like all of these ones that you've come up with and that we're going to talk about, because like you said, it doesn't involve having to talk. It doesn't involve having to speak. So let's get into them.
Let's get into them.
We're going to share some of these techniques and tips and practices that you can start implementing today.
Some fun ones. Take notes, pause, grab a journal, hit it on replay, whatever. So
what's the first one?
We are jumping to, you've had the communication, you've had the conversation, both partners or all partners, whatever, are opting in, and you are now setting into the space. So maybe, you're going to do it for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 hours,
5 minutes.
Maybe you've got a week-long fest of
7 minutes in heaven.
Seven. I hear that like from friends. Monica's like 7. Okay. Anyways, so the first one, and it can be like you're trying to settle in, is mirroring each other, and like one person first. So you're not just mirroring each other being still, but you're like sitting across from them, or you can be standing, but if you can, just kind of like settle in, sit across from them. And then one of you goes first and starts a little movement, whether you're tilting your head to the side or maybe brushing, your shoulder.
If you're only listening to this, go to YouTube and watch this video.
Watch us. Should we do it? Should we demo it?
Go ahead. Keep talking as you're doing it. And
okay.
I'll demonstrate it for the folks on YouTube.
It's hard because you keep moving. So I'm trying to like mirror you, but I'm like, resist.
Go ahead.
Should I mirror you?
And we have to talk at the same time.
Okay. Well, also you're going fast. Like you're sitting here. We're going to be like at a dance club. Woo.
Yes.
Which we'll get to that. Soft, slow movements. And it's just kind of where you're going to allow your body to move in different ways. And they're going to see you.
With some eye contact.
Right? If you can. If eye contact's too hard, work up to it. Work up to it. You don't have to like do it all right away. Moving slow and just kind of allowing each other to like sync up, allow your bodies to sync up. And then the other person gets a turn.
Yeah. So then the other person gets a turn. And like if this is a struggle for you, and if this feels weird for you, and if this is like silly and it's hard, allow it to be that.
Yeah. Laugh.
Humor is going to be the biggest asset in this situation, where you just get to be silly and goofy, and you can do silly things, and you can make silly movements, and everything about the whole process can just be fun and silly and goofy. And that's okay too.
Right.
Because it's, again, we're just practicing it's like your nervous systems are regulating with each other in a way where you don't have to communicate. We're talking right now because we're on the podcast, and obviously we can't just have the next 5 minutes of dead air, but you can just sit here quietly and mirror each other,
right?
And let it be soft and sensual. Let it be silly and, funny, and just get into the flow of connecting with each other in that way.
We got jazz hands.
Yes, we do.
And also, like, we won't go into this too much yet right now, but for those that your imaginations are already going there, yes, this can turn into a very sensual experience that you then mirror actions and movements that can be very fun. So that's a big one, the movements. And when you feel a little calmer, like you've settled into that space, there's also mirroring your breath and syncing your breath. So whether your hands are on your heart, on your belly, just sitting there, maybe you're lying next to your partner and you just match their breath and work on slow, rhythmic, did I say it right? Breathing, and just like really flowing in, allowing your breath to like fill your body. And so both of your breaths start to just like cultivate and sync up, and you're breathing through the same way together. You can also do this like if you are sitting across from each other, and just visualize your breath, like energy going between your hearts, and just feeling. You can even, I don't know, maybe I should save that one for the end. Okay, we'll save that. We're just doing emotional. I keep going immediately. I'm like, this is how you cultivate some of this sexual intimacy, right? But okay, I'm trying to see how quick I can shift.
Seven.
Okay, so we're just mirroring the breath here. And then next is, so what you're doing is you're practicing safe movements. A lot of times we feel frozen in our bodies. We feel frozen in our relationship. We feel frozen. We don't really know what to do. So just these little movements, you're starting to break out of that frozen state. You're mirroring them. You're showing this connection with them, this rapport, this syncing up with their bodies, with breath. You are both breathing in this steady rhythmic thing together, which is, again, syncing up and showing that we're calm, we're safe, we can be like at peace here. Nothing is threatening us in this moment, and we are here. It helps you like drop into the moment with your partner and into your body. And you're already building like this emotional intimacy right now. You're already building trust in these moments, and you haven't had to say a word. In fact, like the words are like not needed. You may have even like giggled a little bit. Maybe you've cried. It can bring up a lot of emotions. Like it just feel okay to cry if it happens. Feel okay to laugh. And maybe it can be confusing. One of your emotional releases can be crying, and the other simultaneously is laughter. And so just to like know that up front, understand that they're both emotional releases, and one isn't crying because the other one hurt them, and one isn't laughing at the other one. It's just like that is how the emotions are coming up and freeing from your body, is you are creating this ability for them to come out without having to think about how they're supposed to come out. So you are already connecting and communicating very deeply without any words. And then we can introduce sound. So the same thing, just making some sounds, not words, not repeating words, because then we're going to get in our head and start trying to have that dialogue, but just sounds. And it can be something like maybe you're going to hum, or maybe you're being really super playful and you can't think of anything other than to make a play fart sound. You're like, that's all I got. Just allow yourself to start to make sounds. Your throat starts to open. You're unblocking the channels that have kept you stifled, kept you from communicating. And they can just like, if you feel stuck, then just practice vowels. Just like, ah, he, just like go through them. You're practicing sounds. Maybe just keep it simple. We'll just leave it at vowels, and then you can come up with your own. And then your partner can mirror those back to you. So it's like, I'm communicating to this, and then you're feeling heard. They're communicating it back to you. And then go ahead and laugh because it's funny and you're going to, and it feels so good.
I said,
you know, and try to match.
Come on,
try and match the tone as close as you can.
Yeah.
And it's not about like singing pitch. It's about vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So the vibration that they're giving, they're also receiving. And then again, you switch. And so then you get to do it. What vibration do you feel like? Maybe you want to be a little like, you know, you're feeling silly and having fun. And so they're mirroring that back. And if that's all you do, if you just spent 5 minutes doing that, and now you have to go cook dinner, or you have to go to different shifts, or, you know, now it's time to go to sleep because it's 1 a.m. and that's when you found time to have 5 minutes together and you're exhausted. You just spent 5 minutes together, like deeply connecting, like really building this emotional. And if it felt like nothing happened, your body recognizes it. Your mind maybe like, that was the dumbest shit we've ever done. What was that? I can't believe okay, like old MacDonald had a farm. What the hell are we doing here? EIO. There you go. But your body is starting to like, oh, this is a safe thing. This is like your body is starting to make those emotional connections.
Yeah, this is how you start to biohack like your nervous system.
Right?
Because you have this nervous system that is affected by everything all the time. And especially if you have trauma and PTSD and all sorts of different things, right? Your nervous system is in an activated state the majority of the time. So it's really hard to slow down to do that heart opening connection that we talked about earlier with your emotions. So this is the way that you can kind of start tiptoeing your way into it and allowing your nervous system to start to take deep breaths and downregulate with each other and start building that. It's almost like a muscle. It's a tool. It's a skill set that you're starting to build in these little ways that is going to lead you into the capacity for that deeper connection that we're all craving with each other.
Yeah. And then you can take this to like some like eye gazing and face gazing. Like you've had this expression. You've done movements, you've done breath, you've done sound, and now maybe you just allow it to be still and you just focus in on each other. Also, after you've done this, like a warm up to the face gazing might feel less silly. You might be like really intimate at that part. I do want to say too, if sexual intimacy is something that you feel safe with, sexual or physical, is something that you feel safe with and you want with your partner, and like that's what you want to do. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat here. My frog wants to be heard. That feels good to you and it is something that you want to cultivate. If that spontaneously comes up while you're doing this, don't be like, no, we said we were going to do these things. You don't have to, like, allow it to flow. Yeah. You can be in the middle of face gazing and suddenly you want to, like, you're ready to go for it. Let your bodies like enjoy each other and go with the flow. If only one of you is ready, you got to wait. You got to keep building it. But it can, you know, you get through 30 seconds and now you're ready for the sexual intimacy, or, you know, you can keep building it. You don't always have to give right in. You can just be like, this is exciting. The pleasure building feels good and we're going to allow it to build. And it's okay if that doesn't come right away either. It's just these little things. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's only what feels like good and open and connected for you and your partner. And you and your partner decide what works for you. There's not like a formula that you must follow in order to get to, you know, this step or whatever. Just do what works for you too. Exactly. Or 3 or 4, like I said, however many. And then when physical touch feels good, you can start by like sitting across from them and holding hands and just allowing your body to sway. Just allowing some sway. Or maybe you're able to stand up and you dance a little. You're just like holding each other, and then maybe you're wrapped in an embrace and you're just simply allowing your bodies to sway. You're not doing the cha-cha. You can dance like you're in 7th grade. You can. Right. You just like rock back and forth.
You can just get that good old 1-2 step back and forth, right? Side to side.
It works.
Yeah.
Do that. It's not time that you have to, like, you're not dancing with the stars right now. I mean, unless you are dancing with the stars and do your thing. But the goal is to get out of your head and to get into your body and connection with your partner. So when you start to like move your body with that, you're going to naturally sync up your breath. You're going to naturally start to eye gaze. So that, and it's a connection. It's like, I'm moving with you. We're feeling this. There's no expectations. If you sit down, I should say that. If you sit down, like, we're going to do this emotional intimacy so we can go have sex.
Yeah.
It's pressure. It's like, it's going to, I mean, you do you, but that's not the goal of it. And it might just not work and create pressure and create resentment and resistance to wanting to practice emotional intimacy.
Yeah. If sex is the goal, like that, this is a really good insight in regards to everything. When you make sex the goal, like the goal is the act of sex / and or orgasms, like that whole, that's a surefire way to just fuck everything up in the long run. Like it's terrible. It really is.
Right. And it's like the only way that I think that wouldn't cause problems is if you both are like, yeah, sex is the goal. That's it. We're just trying to have sex, in which case you're not going to really need to build all this part. If you're just like, no, we just want to go have sex, you get to go do that. But these are not that. If you're like, I'm going to do this so we can have sex, is when you get into the problems. I'm going to do this so that you will have sex with me. I'm going to do this so that you will do this. I'm going to do this so that I can have an orgasm. Like, that's,
it might be a beautiful byproduct.
right.
But the end goal, and goal is, not even the point, right? The purpose is just the connection, just the intimacy, just the allowance of those nervous systems to relax and be calm and start opening up to each other. So,
yes. And then, do you want to talk about any of those? I still have some. Should we keep going, or
yeah,
like
keep going.
different levels? So, and then another thing that you can do is, a lot of times we have all of these things that need to be expressed, but we don't have the words for, or we don't feel like they get stuck in our throat too, and we get scared. We can use these moments. It's like the sound when we're mirroring the sound back, but instead of mirroring, we're just going to like play sounds in a sense. Like, I will just sit here and make sounds to you, and that I want you to hear, whether I'm humming or just like, I'm getting this sensation of communicating, and maybe even like opening the mouth would be a little easier. It's like, ha, 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 and just different sounds.
This one is weird.
It is, but like,
and
follow it through.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do on a podcast if you're just listening. But,
right? If somebody's driving like, what the fuck is
you're like,
because that's something I could come up with at that time.
So just to like make it more for the people, because I have a very, super sweet analytical brain that has to like really understand what the hell's happening.
Yeah, this exercise might not be for you. It's just another one we're throwing out there.
It's really, really amazing, because you have an issue with expressing yourself. So your partner says, hey, why don't you ever tell me what you're feeling? And you have a hard time actually expressing the emotion, because truthfully, you have a hard time feeling the emotion.
Yeah, what if you don't even know what you're feeling?
Exactly. And you can talk, like you don't have a hard time articulating and making sounds and communicating. And this gives you the ability to start subconsciously tapping into what is actually inside the body that needs to be felt. So you're going to use words and your body language and the way that you move. Now, it's not necessarily a slippery slope, but you have to be cognitive of, this isn't your opportunity to just vent all your frustration and your anger.
Not here. You can use this tool for that, but this isn't the time for that.
This is the opportunity to just try to start to free flow some emotion and using auditory sounds and words, because you might feel uncomfortable with humming. You might feel uncomfortable with e, o, u. But what you can do is, I can just sit here and I can start having a conversation with you, Stephanie, and I can just start talking about the things that I want to talk about. And I don't even know what those things are, but I'm going to say things like tree, and then I'm going to say things like cup, and then I'm going to say other things where it's just like, oh my God, I don't even know what's happening right now. And I'm so stressed about this, that, and the other. And then all of these things start coming out of my mouth, and I'm talking about tires on a vehicle, and then shingles on a roof. And then I don't even know, because I like LaCroix, but do I really like LaCroix? I don't even know if I really like LaCroix. And so that's just a small example of where suddenly you can just allow for emotions to come out of your body without having to try to think about what to say or think about, because sometimes we get caught up. I know you and I both do this, and I'm sure other people can relate, but you're trying to express emotion, but you're trying to make sure that that emotion isn't hurtful for your partner, or it's a scary emotion that you don't even know how to express. So it's less about trying to figure out how to articulate our words so that they are received, and more about just allowing your body to articulate sound.
Yeah.
So that things can just simply be expressed. And
Yeah.
in doing so, all of that energy and movement and gesticulation and body language and everything gets to happen, and it frees up space inside your nervous system. It allows, and you can have fun with it. You can have a completely silly conversation where we're talking about, did you realize this other thing that I was going to tell you?
Right.
And then you said, right. And then I was like, what? We're trying to demonstrate it, babe.
I'm sorry. It's just like, I guess my brain, like, I'm seeing it just a little different.
Oh, okay.
No. It's like, I love that. And I love the verbal, it's like free writing with your mouth. Is the way you were going. And I think that is a super big deal. But
how do you see it?
Well, I was just like a starting is just the sound. It's not the words. So you're not trying to think. You can just like straight caveman it. You're just allowing your feelings and your emotions to come out with like, you're just practice. It's like you're creating, it's like, you know, when think about like when you're helping your kid or a child or somebody, you're showing them that something isn't scary when they're scared and they're like, I don't want to go in the water. I don't want to go in the pool. And you're like, it's okay. And you start to like slowly dip your toes in. You're like, see, it's okay. We can go in here and it's a little bit cold, but it's all right. And I'm here with you. So you're just kind of like dipping your toes in and creating a safe channel, because you know, you want to be able to communicate with your partner, or maybe you even have, you know, somebody nonverbal in your life. And so you can like even start to recognize that their sounds are communication, and that you're just like opening up that channel without thinking about what you're going to say. And I like your free writing idea though. I think like that's definitely one to keep on there. But just for like this point right here, you're just making sounds, and you're not using this time. Like you have to watch. This can be a really like a therapeutic, in a sense, a somatic release to where emotions, frustrations, angers, resentments come out. And like, this might not be the time for it. There's definitely a time and place for that. But for this podcast, we're talking about like just building this emotional intimacy and this connection energy, not working through like buried hurt, which obviously we don't shy away from that. We dive headfirst into buried hurts and all of these in the shadow. But just for this is what we're talking. So it's like this expression of sound of where you're starting to practice. Maybe your partner like has a really hard time saying, I love you, I care about you, you matter to me. They feel it, but maybe they grew up in a house where that wasn't said, that wasn't accepted, it was made fun of, it was really ridiculed. So that's not safe for them. But you are like, I need to hear these words of affirmation. I need to hear this, and I'm not getting that. So your partner is showing you love in all these other ways, but they're not able to communicate that. And that's something that you need, or maybe you're both, however. But this kind of creates a space where they're practicing, they're making sounds, they're able to go through without having to say things that don't feel safe for them, or they don't know how to access yet. So it's just another tool. It's not something to use in place of communication, but it's another tool to build that intimacy, that safety with your partner. So just practicing like looking at somebody, feeling the love, making a sound, and like you don't have to say the word, you don't have to say I love you. You're just like, yeah, exactly. Maybe like Nerf. I don't know you, whatever. And then your partner isn't mirroring that back. They respond. So you get to make all of these sounds and express, and then your partner responds with what's coming up for them. And it's not one of those like you don't have to recap what was heard. It's not, you're not failing if you didn't listen correctly, because the only thing you're doing is making sound. And maybe you can then put in some ecstatic dance in a sense. It's like you're moving your body. So when you're making the sound, you allow yourself to move and sway, allow your hands to come up, allow them to touch part of your body. And again, you can use that for sensual fun too. And just so like you're communicating with your body, your sound, your energy. And then you're just having this communication, this whole conversation where like you feel like you really connected, or your body's learning that it's safe to connect.
Yeah.
And so just little practices that you can do to build this emotional. That. And then I liked your free writing for the mouth. Where you just say random things just to have fun with. Also careful, some might slip out. So again, you'd be like, oh shit, that's not what I meant.
What else?
After that, I was going to talk about like sensory exploration. Like you're good with this, you're comfortable with this, and you want to like take it to the bedroom and do sensory touch where it's just like touch, or you want to practice non-sexual touch, which we've also talked about, and just how safe that is. So you're going to take like your hand and trace your fingers on your arm or on their arm or back and forth, whatever feels okay. Now you have to be careful because your nose or nose, they need to be like heard, but where you can just get in sensory exploration of the other person's body in safe, healthy ways that doesn't feel like it can lead sexual if that's where you want it to go. But if ahead of time, if that's not it, you just want to feel safe with touch that is not sexual, building the emotional intimacy, then start to be able to trust that. Like it would be nice to receive a hug or a shoulder rub without having to think that, oh, this means that I need to like get myself ready for sex. And if not, then they're going to think I don't love them. And there's all these things, all of the, like the, I can't think of the word, expectations and all of the crap that sometimes can come into play with that. So it's where like, I'm going to hold your hand and that's it. Like I'm holding your hand. I'm giving you a hand massage and not so that we can go have sex. And then you can start to receive that too, where being touched feels safe, not feeling like I have to keep touch away. I have to keep this intimacy away because otherwise it means that I'm saying yes to something that I don't want.
This is a big one.
Are we going to dive in?
Well, I think this goes back to...
This is not day one practice.
I think it goes back to the conversation earlier where it's like they're not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Intimacy doesn't equal sex.
No.
Physical touch doesn't equal sex. Expressing your emotions and opening up your heart doesn't equal sex.
Yes.
However, in relationships, and there's a bunch of reasons why I think it is this way, right? Where that is oftentimes the only safe way for some people to connect or to feel safe enough to connect. Mm-hmm. And there's also all of the ways that it's portrayed and all the information that we're receiving in society and in culture and in movies and TV and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. That's the dynamic, like the purpose of a relationship is for sex, right? The purpose of emotional and physical connection. So if I am going to hold hands with you, or if I am going to give you a shoulder rub or whatever the case may be, that is foreplay. And yes, it is. And yes, it
can be, right?
So it's both.
So there's no shame.
Where it very much is and it very much isn't.
Yeah, and it gets to not be.
Exactly.
It gets to not be and like not be.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a really, really good practice for building this emotional intimacy, is getting to that point where you feel safe enough to start having physical connection and touch with one another. And agreeing ahead of time is really important, of like, this is just this. Like, I'm just going to sit on the couch and I'm going to rub your feet simply because I want you to have the enjoyment of a foot rub. There's no expectation of reciprocation. There's no expectation that it's going to lead to anything else. I'm just going to rub your feet for you right now, or your shoulders, or your arm, or, we're just going to sit here and do nothing other than just enjoy each other's physical bodies in a sense by being in the same space and time with one another without any other expectation other than that. And in doing that, you take that nervous system again, that subconscious thing that's happening inside of you, where it just gets a chance to relax and to regulate with each other and to calm down. And all of these things accumulate over time to cultivate and build that ability to then open up and connect even deeper.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the distinguishing between the two of them are so, so important. Because if you like sometimes like we need a breath, like just take a breather, and to where not, and there can be such an unhealthy relationship between this equals I'm supposed to do that. I can't even receive because it means that I'm going to owe this, or I only know how to show up and get this connection if I'm offering this. So there's just so many different ways that gets convoluted, and to take all of the expectations off the table is so freeing, and it feels so good, and it builds such a level. And then there's also the other side of like where we have this, but like we're struggling with sexual intimacy.
This is really funny. Sorry. What you just said, right? Taking this off the table, meaning like setting sex aside and being like, that's not the goal of what's happening right now. We're taking that off the table. So it's not even something either one of us has to sit in the back of our mind and worry about. So if you're struggling with connecting sexually, taking it off the table is actually a way to actually connect sexually, right? Because if you eliminate it as a possibility and instead replace it with all of these other things in an effort to connect with one another, then eventually it becomes a much more viable option. It becomes a much safer thing to actually start experiencing with one another.
Yes. But I do encourage you to like honor your previous agreements before, because if you're like, it's off the table, but then it's like we go into it, then you know how I said before, like if the sexual comes up and that's what you're wanting, then go for it. But that has to be a thing that it's something that you are wanting and to go for. If you agree ahead of time that even if you get aroused during this, it's off the table, you need to honor that. Because next time you go into that space, if you didn't honor it, you're going to be more resistant going into it thinking, yeah, but if it goes here, it's still the expectations here. Because so even if you're like, I am at a 10 and I want you now, like, no, we promised each other that it was off the table. So for that time being, it's off the table. But, you know, maybe later that evening or the next day, you can like, hey, you know that thing that worked really well? Let's go ahead and play with Let's go ahead and play with that sensory exploration now and
see where it goes.
Not and have sex and get to the same level of arousal that we were before, not and expectation. Let's just go play with that again and see where it goes. And no expectation, but allowance. If it gets there, then we can go. If it doesn't, it's okay. We just had fun connecting again. Nothing is lost.
Yeah.
Nothing is lost, only gained in these moments.
So again, this whole thing that we've been talking about this episode is emotional intimacy. And all of this stuff also that we're talking about, it can lead to sex, right? Which is great. But more importantly, the goal of, I shouldn't say the goal because this isn't some goal-oriented practice, right?
We just said no expectations, but the goal.
One of the byproducts of these experiences is the ability to then sit through emotion with each other. So that's something else too. That's like the next step of cultivating this connection with one another and then being able to sit down and have hard conversations.
Because emotions aren't always easy.
Yeah.
They're
being
not
able
always
to
fun.
sit down and actually communicate with each other. But the goal, I keep saying that, right? The intention, I think, should be more towards learning how to connect with each other emotionally,
right?
And learning how to actually drop in and have hard emotional conversations with each other in a place where you both feel able to be vulnerable to both share and receive and listen and hold space and be in those really both beautifully uncomfortable and hard moments, but also those, like sometimes emotions obviously really heavy and hard. And other times it's like being able to sit with you through grief and sadness has helped us immensely, right? And then vice versa. So it's one of those things that the more you can practice all of these emotional things to downregulate the nervous system and co-regulate together and all of those kind of things, then it gives you the ability to actually sit in and connect emotionally, which is awesome.
It is. And just to guff that a little bit more, like this is really important that depending on where you're at, if you are like communicate, like if this is going towards increasing your sexual intimacy, which again, it's a great it helps with that, right? If that's what you want. But both people have to be on the same page, or all the people up front. You have to have this like communication of like, Like, I want to like build our sexual intimacy, and I want to build our emotional intimacy. And like, I want to feel like safer with you emotionally and more connected. And I want us to work on this. And I want it to like, I want our sexual intimacy to benefit from it. Like, you have to be upfront about that. And it can't be like if one party is yes and the other one is no, that just like sticking with emotional only. If you are going into it fully, like if you're going into it for the intention of it turning sexual and your partner is not, you haven't had that conversation, or they're like, I don't want this to become sexual. Like, I need to feel safe with my emotions and with your emotions, and I'm not ready for that. I don't like, it doesn't matter where in your relationship you are, if your partner is not there and you are using this and saying yes, or going into this or building this for that purpose behind the scenes, if you're being manipulative about it, you like, this is going to destroy trust and emotional intimacy. If you're like trying to connect with your partner falsely, intimately falsely, emotionally falsely, just so you can be sexual with them, it's going to there's going to be a lot of repair that you may or may not have the opportunity to take part in that relationship. Yeah. So it's just like honesty. It's okay to want it to turn sexual. It's okay to have that desire, but you just really have to be honest with your partner and with yourself about why you're stepping into those spaces. And like, it's either like you move, I don't know how to express that anymore. It's just such a big deal. If you're trusting somebody with your emotions and your energy, and you're thinking you're building this, and they're just using this as a tactic to get more sex out of the relationship or however, and they have no real investment in emotional connection, they just want to be sexual, like it's going to be so painful. I'm trying to, you disagree, but I'm like strong. No, I pointed, I'm like, you disagree.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't think that person that's going to use this as a manipulation tactic
is going to go through this stuff.
Yeah, I think that you're not going to present that to that type of relationship isn't going to get to the point where they're like, hey, let's have some emotional intimacy practice. Right? I mean, the reality is, could that pretend happen and all those kind of things? Absolutely. But most likely that relationship, that couple probably isn't going to get to this point. I'm
not saying be afraid of your partner doing this. I'm saying if you are hearing this and your partner is on board, don't do that.
It's a warning, Steph.
It is a warning. Use your powers for good.
Anything else before we move on to the final
No, we're totally
segment?
Like, I'm totally, no, let's just move on.
Okay. So you can, this is the part of the podcast where we answer your questions. And we're super excited because we recently had the technological advance. Like when we finally set this up, it was so funny to me because I realized that we literally just have an answering machine. And I'm like, how cool is that? And also legitimately it's 1989.
We just went back in time and then thought it was an advancement. Yeah. Thought we were like.
Yeah, we reinvented the wheel. And then
we're like, look at the wheel.
New thing.
Look at the wheel.
You guys you're not going to believe this, but you can actually pick up your phone. Get this, right? And then if you call this number, go ahead. It's 423.
We're not even going to. It's going to go straight to voicemail,
it's
right?
423.
It's safe.
521-0355. You can then leave us what is called a voicemail. It's crazy. It's brand new technology that we just found out.
Does it beep at the end?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, does it beep? If it does, we have to redo the message and we can be like, leave us a message at the beep.
We can just introduce a beep.
And then go beep. We have to redo the voicemail now.
Anyways, this part of the episode is where we answer your questions and you can now call on those questions. So this week, we're going to play one. Stand by for technical
standing by
things. You ready?
5, 4.
Okay, don't count it down.
3.
Let's go. This week's question is from Ashley.
Hey, it's Ashley. I do have a quick question. It's a lengthy one, I guess. And I don't mind if it's podcast. You guys are great. Your whole podcast is great, and I hope more people continue to follow you. You guys are extremely encouraging for folks that have restarted in life. I don't want to cry. I really enjoy your podcast. It's extremely motivational these past few months since I've discovered you folks. I guess my question is, how do you know that you're not overthinking that you love someone, or is love measured in certain areas in your life? Am I truly in love with someone, or is the idea of love that I want?
So that's the question. And then Ashley adds a little bit at the end there, but the idea, and it's a great question. First off, our hearts go out to you, Ashley, right?
So much.
Like, love is a super hard thing for, I think, everybody. It is for us.
Yeah.
Right? Questioning, is it real? Do I in fact love this person? Or am I just in love with the idea of love?
In love, yeah.
And I think that goes to, like, what comes up for me when I think about it is, what is your relationship to relationships? Like, are you happy being alone? Are you able to be alone? In your mind, you have to be in a relationship, because I think sometimes we fall in love with the idea of being in a relationship or being in love, because that's the only place that we're actually going to be whole or complete or actually be happy. And I think there's good and bad things in that space, where there's nothing wrong with wanting a relationship or feeling like a relationship is going to be the thing that makes you whole, or that you find, yourself in. Like, all of those things are totally okay too. And I think it's also important to realize that a relationship isn't going to do all of those things per se, right? It involves a lot of work, and it involves a lot of reflection. And it's not to say, yes, you have to like find yourself first before you can be in a relationship. That works for some people, but I think you can trust the curiosity that you have about it, right? I think you can trust the question that you're posing. Can I in fact trust love? And I think the fact that you're asking that question probably means that you can't yet trust your intuition. You can't yet trust that this is actually kind of what we were talking about too on the podcast. It's like your emotions, right? You're having a hard time trusting your emotions and believing that this is actually the thing, or am I just in love with the idea of this? So it's like, what is your relationship with love like? And what is your relationship with relationships like? And I would get more curious in regards to that, and kind of what comes up in your mind, and less about, because we have a fantasy of what love is, right? And what we like this beautiful picture of what love is and being in love is. And it can be very much that in reality, but it's also oftentimes not. Yeah. It's not that. What came up for you with her question, babe?
I don't think that there's any way to measure it. I think deep down, there's a part of it where you're trying to convince yourself that it's not that bad, right? I can handle that. I can handle that. I just want to be in a relationship. And even if you won't admit it to yourself. And then there's also another part that may be playing out that is, I'm actually really scared. So is it this? Is it not? Because the thought of being in love, even if it's like this wonderful, hopeful fantasy, sometimes just that thought is super scary. So you look for ways to invalidate it so you don't have to put yourself at risk. So with that, I'm just kind of get curious on that with yourself. How do you know? Well, Ashley, like, how do you know? Are you justifying really unhealthy behavior, or are you too scared to jump and let it be wonderful? Maybe you are in love with the idea of being in love, and you're in a really good space too. And so that could equal a lot of fear coming up.
And
maybe,
and truthfully, like, I mean, just from our experience, when we fell in love with each other, it wasn't without fear. It wasn't without doubt. It wasn't like suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm so certain that this is the person for me and I'm so in love with them. The other, and maybe this, because this is also coming up for me now too, is where maybe you realize, maybe you've done some work and you realize that it's hard to trust because you might be afraid that maybe like your shadow is actually in love, right? Where you realize that you have an unhealthy relationship with love and you don't trust that you're actually coming at it from this healthy place as opposed to some of your subconscious behaviors or coping mechanisms or some of those trauma responses that come from your past. Like that might be what you're afraid of, is that you're coming at this from an unhealthy perspective rather than from this other healthier place where love is safe and you understand it and you're showing up in a healthy way. And if that's the case, I mean, it's a valid question regardless to question, right? It's a valid thing to look at and feel. But I don't, at least from our lived experience, as well as like people that we have experience with, you don't ever quote unquote feel like super safe. It is always a leap. There's always a spot where you have to take a risk and it's going to be scary. And that's okay. And it's okay to be scared of it. Love itself is a scary thing because you are opening up your heart to being hurt. But that's what, I mean, it's not, we don't open up our hearts to be hurt, but it comes with the potential of also being loved and receiving love and having a beautiful life and relationship and everything like that. So
I think a question you could be is like asking yourself, are you sabotaging yourself or denying or dismissing yourself in order to be in the relationship? Are you sacrificing yourself at all ends and your values to be in a relationship? If you are sacrificing, sabotaging, and denying yourself and your values, then you might want to take a look at that, and that maybe it is just the thought of being with somebody that is driving it. But if you're just like, if it's just that fear, it's like we want to be safe to be in a relationship. We want to be safe to love. And we think a lot of times that safety equals certainty. We're only safe if we can be certain that it will work, that we can be certain that it will last. And as scary as it is to hear, nothing is that. Nothing is certain. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is owed. So if you're just looking for certainty, we're like, it would be beautiful to have, but the only thing certain about it is that we're not going to get certainty.
And love doesn't come without pain.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. The idea that it's going to be a perfect fairy tale and I know that we all know this in our head. We're like, yeah. But the reality of like the subconscious really wants love to equal no pain. And in reality, it comes with pain. Like truly, deeply loving somebody and being in love with somebody and having that type of relationship also comes with experiencing deep pain and sorrow and sadness.
That doesn't mean accepting abuse or toxic behavior. I do want to say that. You'd be like, love is pain, so like the abuse that I'm receiving is okay. No, that's not what we're saying. There's a very different.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Ashley.
I would love follow-ups if you want to.
If you want to call in your questions, you can. Again, the number is 423. It's 423-521-0355. You can also still send these in via email. You can DM us via social. However you get our questions to us, it doesn't matter. We like to, if you have homing pigeons, you can send them a pigeon or a crow or an owl. Anyway is perfectly fine with us.
Yeah. And Ashley, if you do want to interact more with us, and I encourage you to either, if you want to interact more with us directly about this, then email us or DM us so that we can respond back too.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your question.
It's a great question.
And thank you for your kind words.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for listening, everybody,
to
the Energy is Love podcast. We're excited and we'll see you next week.